Far from campus marshes in downtown, last night another shooting involving multiple people, in which 4 were hit. One of the victims sadly died. Fox 2's Camille Amiri spoke with a witness and also with the chief.
Mass chaos Friday night going into Saturday morning at the intersection of Randolph and Monroe in downtown Detroit.
As soon as I came out, like literally 4 or 5 minutes later, the police was surrounded, the ambulance, people was running, and I just heard gunshots. It was like really, really crazy.
A total of 4 people shot, one of them fatally. Investigators say one of the suspects pointed his gun at police, prompting the lead officer to return fire.
This guy's inside of a very crowded parking structure, midnight, literally hundreds of people inside the parking structure and firing indiscriminately.
Why the f are there hundreds of people inside a park? What is happening? Okay, maybe this is because I'm a boomer and I don't leave my house. But like, are we talking like people are having like a social in the parking structure? Like people are just parking in the lot and then getting out and filling up like red party cups with like booze and just like what? They're touching grass? Well, they're touching concrete at least. Yeah, probably. Okay. I mean, like whatever. I don't care. Like whatever. Damn. Like, I don't know. Advice. Hey guys. Okay. Advice if you're young and you're watching me. Okay. Coming from somebody who never leaves the house. All right. Be careful with who you spend time with. When I was growing up, there were a lot of friends I had in high school who spent their time with like older guys from college or from Koreatown, and almost always it worked out poorly. There are some crowds you can hang with that are pretty bad and will push you to do bad things that seem fun and cool and edgy and dangerous. And sometimes they are and sometimes they really aren't. Like a lot of the stuff that makes you feel really cool when you're 16 is incredibly lame when you're 20, you know? And the reason the 20-year-olds are hanging with you is because like they're hoping you don't know that, because you're young and stupid. Be careful with who you hang out with, okay? I'm not even talking about like a grooming thing or whatever. Just, it's like people will like, you know, people will +1 their friends to a party, but they'll be younger, and then the person they +1 will be younger, and it's like you're hanging out in like a really mixed age range between like 15 and 25. And obviously there's a huge risk of like sexual abuse there, but even outside of that, like stuff gets dangerous sometimes, and you're not always old enough to understand what like a perceivable threat is. Like you can't always like vibe check that shit really well. You know, like Koreatown, which is in LA, you know, it's like a little while east of where I grew up, is infamous in a lot of ways for bad crowds. And just like I heard so many stories, you know. Just be careful, okay? You know, you never want to end up being used. You never want your corpse to end up being used as a justification for a conservative lawmaker to pass a curfew for 2 p.m. for all your former classmates, okay? You don't let the news of your death be brought to a city council hearing, so all your classmates have to go home at like 1:30 p.m. Okay, just saying.
Permanently.
The suspect was hit by police gunfire. The getaway car he was in speeding off to a nearby hospital. Not surprisingly, police arrested him a short time later.
True.
It was just a lot of youth here, and it was the energy was just very off, and
there it is.
They were just picking on folks, and you know it was just a bad timing and a bad situation.
We're already used to stuff like that.
Wait, why would they omit the line "they were picking on people"? I think that's a lot more meaningful than him just saying like the vibes were off. If they were picking on people, dude, a lot of kids are like brutal, man. A lot of kids are savage because they have like underdeveloped brains and they're looking to impress all of their peers by being awful to the people around them. Yeah, kids suck, you know? Like a lot of kids, especially in groups, you know? Individually, you can reason. I think with a kid, you know, you can like talk to them, but if they're with their friends, they'll say or do anything to look cool, you know? So yeah, it's pretty bad. If you want to reduce juvenile crime and like murders and shit, a curfew is the last thing that you want. You guys realize, like, the reason why kids are doing these stupid flash mobs and f***ing up and doing all this shit is because they're economically desperate, they're deprived, they have no hope for the future, you know, any of that shit. And then, like, if you curfew them, that doesn't fix anything. That just bottles them up at home, which, like, worsens all of the problems, you know? Yeah, like directionless f***ing mobs of kids, you know? Yeah. You don't want that. Man, okay, pardon me for pulling this back to the nerdiest shit in the universe, okay? But, like, this reminds me so much of one of the underlying narrative trends of pathologic. When the desperately poor city is on the fritz and the plague finally strikes the town, like the kids become their own separate kind of like economic and political body. And the main reason for that is because they're like completely unattended. And, you know, you can soy that if you want, and you should. I deserve to be soyed right now. But one of the reasons for this is because the time period that the game is based on, which is kind of like it's not exactly historically accurate. It's meant to be kind of artistically abstract, but we're talking about like the Russian steppe around the time of the revolution, you know? In a lot of these neighborhoods and villages that were participating in the revolutionary war over there, you know, in the Russian Revolution, like nobody was looking after the kids, and the kids basically grew up feral, you know? Like the kids weren't like at home after school until they went to bed. You know, groups would like sort of roam around in gangs and would just take care of themselves, and occasionally they'd go home to sleep. Like, this is pretty common in really poor areas because the kids, like, you know, the parents can't really provide for them. The kids try to do their own shit, you know? But all of this stems from deprivation. You want to give kids something to do. You want to give them like this is one of the reasons why NGOs will often try to push for like youth, what are they called? Like youth activities, like what are they called? What's the term for them? When there's like organizations that will try to get like, hey, you know, here's like a basketball court here. You can show up here at 6 p.m. and we'll do a thing, you know? Yeah, like after school youth programs. Exactly. Yeah. The idea being like, okay, kids probably aren't going to do really negative antisocial stuff if you give them social outlets that are constructive. And for the most part, I think those are pretty effective. Yeah. Recreational centers, stuff like that. This is one of the reasons why you see a lot of, you know, basketball courts in poor neighborhoods. And it's one of the reasons why black people went on to have such a disproportionate like influence over the sport of basketball. Basketball courts for a sport like arena are really small, you know? It's not like a soccer field. You can build a basketball court like pretty much anywhere. And having a place that you can go to play a sport, like to do something, to hang out with your friends, it's considered a really constructive, positive thing in your community. You know what I mean? Like it's better. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have people doing like playing sports or whatever and they're young, like what else they're going to be doing? It feels like modern day cities and suburbs aren't equipped to handle people actually hanging out in it. That's because the people who design cities are not the people who live in them. The city councils that design cities treat them as like a shopping district for the suburbs, which means that they're half parking lot and like shopping center, and there's very little there that are meant to provide amenities for people who actually live there. This is because suburbanites are subhuman pieces of shit. You know, they like for almost all of human history, cities weren't places people went to from the suburbs. Cities were places people lived. You can look at any layout of like Paris or London, like in the medieval period or whatever, and it, like you look at how it's built and designed, people live there. They live in the city. You know, it's not like people were taking 100-mile trips from local villages to go there every day and the whole city was built around that. Of course, it had robust trade, but a lot of people lived there too. But now cities are built with like office towers and shopping, and like at any given day, 5 times as many individual human beings might occupy a city territory as live there, you know? Because people are traveling in and out of other areas. And it's like, you know, just really, really messed up. It's not good.
That we can't enjoy nightlife and drinking and just having a good.
Detroit's downtown area is 30% parking lot. Ugh. Yeah. This is what I mean. Like, shit like this is literally because suburbanites, like, roll in. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. The Philly curfew only applied to a mall, not the entire city. Wait. Of all of the places in Philadelphia where they wanted to institute a 2 p.m. curfew, it's the mall? New curfew for its mall in Center City. Oh my god, dude. What are malls for? Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Time.
On Saturday, people enjoying this stretch of unseasonably warm weather. Many of them oblivious to all the dried blood splatters on the sidewalk.
As soon as it get 80 degrees, I just feel like the
Shut the fuck up. What a fear-mongering line. Shut up. What a weird line. Fuck you. All these normal people enjoying a seasonable day. Little did they know the urban crime. Fuck that. I hate that. Fear-mongering bullshit. Yeah, it's narrativizing. It's like, you know, it's like that little do you know at any time. Yeah, people Get hurt sometimes. People get shot. It sucks, okay? There's like fear-mongering shit only ever worsens this.
Shooting's gonna go on all year round. As soon as it get hot, everybody's bringing out the animosity and they're just going wild.
Detroit is doing better. They're getting rid of a highway going through the city. I want to note, by the way, that I don't know as much about Philadelphia, but from what I understand, Detroit and Chicago have both been experiencing urban renewals for the past 20 years. I think more so Chicago than Detroit, but as I understand it, Chicago is like actually a pretty cool place, and Detroit has actually seen a pretty positive uptick in terms of its like design and blah blah blah, you know. Obviously not in every way and not in all parts, but Detroit for a long time has been like the national stereotype of urban crime, and there's a reason for that, and a lot of it is racial, but I think things are getting better. Yeah.
Going crazy.
Are you worried about what the summer's gonna be like?
Yeah, I'm definitely worried because I be down here every day, so.
Police Chief James White joining his officers on foot patrol Saturday evening.
I've already directed the officers tonight. We've got juveniles out here that are violating curfew.
I know he means generally, but the way he said it made it sound like he meant right now. Like he's looking around at noon and he's like, yep, there are some kids out here past curfew. And like, just the sun is beaming down on him.
They're going to be taken into custody, and we're going to be calling their parents, and we're going to be issuing parental responsibility tickets.
In Detroit, Camille
Oh my
Mary, Fox 2
God.
News.
Hey, I know it'll cut down on juvenile crime, okay? For all of these, like, edgy, antsy, do-nothing, like, aimless teens to be given, for their parents to be given juvenile parental negligence tickets or whatever. Jesus. I'm from Detroit and I live in PA now. Most of Philly is fine. Only some parts are crazy at night, mostly bar and entertainment districts. Look, if you want to have safe cities, okay, what you need to do is provide good economic opportunity, all right? People are much more likely to do antisocial shit like murder people or like assault people if they don't feel like they have much hope in their life. People don't do shit like that if they have like prospects they want to preserve. If things are going well for them, they have hope for the future, and they can think like, yeah, you know, I can get into college, I can get a good job. They're much less likely to do that crazy shit, you know? It's mostly desperate people who feel like they have nothing in their life they need to preserve. And a lot of violence comes from gangs. Gangs are, as much as some lefties hate to admit it, really bad. And usually, as gangs may take care of their own, but they terrorize neighborhoods. And the reason they do that is because the whole point of a gang is they compete for territory with other gangs for illicit activities in that territory. It's an economic thing. People only turn to gangs because there aren't other ways to make money in their neighborhood. Those are the two main things that lead to like juvenile crime. You know, you can't get rid of crime 100%, but like that's the attitude you have to approach. The idea that in a city as large as Detroit or Chicago or Philadelphia, that you can cut down on or reduce or even, you know, like come close to eliminating juvenile crime with a curfew and having more cops running around is delusional. It's delusional, and it opposes the data that we have. You know, massive increase in police spending does nothing but pull resources away from other things they could be spent on, like, you know, youth outreach groups that would actually do a lot more to help in this situation. This is exactly what happened with youth knife crimes in London, where community programs were defunded and young people had no activities to do. Yeah. It still is very funny to me that youth knife crime is like an unironic and sincere thing that's referred to in like British, like, it's just, you there, strip down to your knickers. Oi. It's sorry. I'm black in Philly. Gangs aren't really a thing. Well, gangs are a thing everywhere. I don't know what the gang scene is like in Philly, obviously, so I can't really speak to that. But there's always any area where there are poor people, there's likely to be some kind of like a group of people doing something illicit, blah blah, you know, a gang. I mean, the drugs have to come from somewhere, right? Fentanyl, cocaine, crack, weed in places where it's not legal, like all that comes in from somewhere. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't materialize out of nowhere. The amount of fear-mongering about Detroit in the local news is insane, so blatantly obvious. Yeah, well, and the fear-mongering makes it worse, too, because it directs people's attention to the wrong places. Yeah, I remember this one. Murder per square mile in 2022. Jacksonville, Florida, 0.19. New York City, 1.38. Murder per square mile. If you actually look at like the numbers, conservative areas are actually much more like murder ridden, you know? The reason why you have higher crime rates in cities is because there are more people in cities, like depending on the definition of rate, like how you're actually approaching it. And oftentimes it's also a proximity thing as well. But yeah, it's Murder rates per 100,000. New York City 5.5. Jacksonville, Florida 12. Yeah. What is the murder rate for Detroit? Detroit murder rate. 4th highest murder rate among major cities in the U.S. But what about like in general? Because there are plenty of places that aren't major cities. Here. States by murder rate. Yeah, it's interesting. If you look for like cities, then you get one story. But then if you take a look at by state, so just like generally the area, you know? Oh, this is age adjusted. Oh no, homicide mortality per state. Yeah. It's actually the worst in the Deep South. But that's not because of the cities. That's because of that's because these places fucking suck. Isn't that by death rate? Well, here it's by homicide mortality. Is suburban planning bad in greater cities with intuitive public transit like Vancouver? Suburban planning? What are you talking? They plan those? Some cities have better suburban planning, but generally American suburbia is pretty like ubiquitously terrible. You know, the best suburbs in the United States are mid-density suburbs. Chicago suburbs. This is what I'm talking about, baby. This is one of the reasons, you know, I've heard a lot of positive stuff about Chicago. Like this. I don't know why they boosted the saturation on this photo so much, but when I think of Chicago or like former Rust Belt suburbs, I think of stuff like this, where rather than everyone having a gigantic plot of land and everything costing a umptillion fuck ton, they're actually like really pretty walkable areas that are just like single family or townhouse residential oriented. But it's a lot better than yeah, here's from Albany Park, Chicago. Look at that. Man, if all suburbia looked like this, then I really would not complain about it so much. They're all like brick townhouse styles, you know, where you have like this looks nice. Yeah, it does. I mean, if you compare it to American suburbia broadly, you can immediately see like most suburban areas in America have no tree cover, which means that they're unpleasant to walk under. There's nothing to walk to. Whereas right over here, you can see a park literally right back here. Houses are super spaced out, which means they're really expensive to accommodate for in terms of like road upkeep. Literally, look at this cul-de-sac, man. This cul-de-sac that this tiny infant is walking across here is like 5 cars wide. For a single... Look, what did they need that road for? They didn't. They just built it because they could. Cost umpteen $1 trillion. Vaush Albany Park is a neighborhood, not a suburb. No, these are called like medium density suburbs. Or at least I've heard the term used to describe them, where you're talking about like mostly single family residential neighborhoods that stretch on for a while, that are in the like adjacency to the city core, but they're not like suburbia. If the term for if this can't be appropriately described as a suburb, then I take back what I said about this being a good suburb, and I'm simply just going to say that it's a good residential area. It's not suburbs, it's Chicago, but a lot of suburbs around Chicago are still like that. Okay, thank you. All right. Vaush fire trucks have to gain access. They don't need to be able to do a fucking U-turn in the cul-de-sac. Also, by the way, like the existence of fire trucks are an argument against suburbs, because it means you have like the accommodations you have to make with these extremely low density areas. Total bullshit. You know, one of the big problems that we have in terms of our city design is that we make our fire trucks too big. Our fire trucks are huge. They're massive. They don't need to be this big, but they're this big like all over the country. They're this big everywhere. Look at the location in which this photo is being taken. Do you think they need like an 80-foot extendable ladder or some shit? How big are the ones in Spain? I swear to God, I remember fire trucks being smaller in other countries. Look! It looks like a food truck! It's so cute! Beep, beep! Look at that! It's not like they don't have skyscrapers in Spain. Like, it's not like they don't have tall buildings. But for some reason, Americans have decided that we need gigantic fire trucks, which means that all of our roads and all of our transportation systems and all of our networks have to be built to accommodate these colossal... Vaush, I'm a volunteer firefighter in PA, and they do need to be that big. They carry a lot of important gear and much more water than European trucks. No hate to their trucks, but our trucks have so much advanced life-saving equipment that saves lives. Is it really better here? Okay, you're a volunteer firefighter, so I'm not going to argue against you here. I've read really compelling arguments against like the size of our fire trucks. I'm not going to argue with your expertise. However, like, man, if I could find those articles again, I feel like pretty legitimate complaints have been levied against them. I mean, couldn't it be like a per case situation, you know? Or like if you're in a city area, like every like fire depot could have like 2 big trucks and 1 little beep beep truck that wouldn't be so large. Or yeah, I don't know. Just drive 2 smaller trucks. Yeah, true. Vaush, so Ed, Edd n Eddy has an ugly setting. Yes, Ed, Edd n Eddy is an ugly cartoon. It's kind of part of the art style. Can you imagine Ed, Edd n Eddy except all the backgrounds are like beautiful Japanese like high schools with the sakura trees and everything? Like all their dumb shenanigans, and in the background they have like digital art over processed bloom, like beauty. Yeah, you know, like the visual novel style backgrounds. Ours looks cool. I actually think our fire trucks look like shit. In my humble opinion.